So we want to talk about real quick how Great Britain turns to the United States before we get into Japan and the Pacific expansion there. So Great Britain is alone. Hitler is launching bombing attacks using the Luftwaffe every single day over Britain. They're dropping bombs. They're bombing London. It's called the Battle of Britain. It's not really a battle. It's just constant daily bombing by the Germans over London, hoping to force Britain into submission so that they'll surrender to the Nazis. And they will not do it. So Britain needs help, but the United States can't join the war. We have this, we just did World War I. We're not supposed to be doing anything. And Franklin Roosevelt doesn't really want to get involved in the war. At least publicly speaking, he says he doesn't want to get involved. So we need to offer Great Britain our help, but we can't do it in a way that seems like we're involved in the war. So this is when government policy really comes into like what they do versus what we see. So one of the first things they do is that we are going to cash and carry. We're going to allow British ships to buy military supplies from the United States, but they have to come pick them up themselves and they have to pay for them in cash. And it keeps us out of the war, right? Because we are not involved. We are just selling our supplies to Great Britain. And we are keeping our people out of it because we are saying that Great Britain has to come pick them up themselves. So if there's a problem, if there's a bombing or something like that, then that's Britain's problem. It's not ours. We are providing you the weapons and the military supplies that we already have, but you have to pay for them yourself and you have to come pick them up yourself. Don't expect us to bring them to you. So that works out for a little bit, but again, it's supposed to be non-interference by the U.S. government, and we're allowing this to happen. So later on, cash and carry will turn into the Lend-Lease Act when Congress decides that we're going to pass a law that's going to allow British to purchase more advanced weapons from the United States. They don't have to just purchase what's already there. We can make weapons and military supplies for Great Britain, and they can borrow them from us for a nice little fee. And this is going to be beneficial to us because it will open jobs so that U.S. workers can go back to work in the factories, because the Ford factory or the Dodge factory is no longer making cars. Now they're making weapons that we can lend to Great Britain. Again, we're not fighting the war. We're not sending soldiers. We're just sending supplies and military weapons. Then Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt meet on a battleship in the middle of the Atlantic, and they sign the Atlantic Charter, where they agree to support each other. But again, U.S. says, we will not give you manpower, but we will give you other things. So what else could they possibly need besides manpower? Well, they might benefit from some extra naval protection. So we are going to give them our old World War I destroyers in exchange for access to the British Atlantic naval bases for the next 50 years. And so Britain might need a naval ship, and we have no use for the World War I naval ships anymore. They're outdated. They're really unused. They're really just they're useless to us. So if we keep them, we just have all these ships sitting in our harbors, or we can send them off to Great Britain in exchange for access to their Atlantic bases for the next 50 years. What a great deal. Britain obviously takes this deal, although I think Churchill is fed up. I was like, why aren't you giving me help? You're giving me stuff, but you're not giving me help. And we will not actually give anybody help until Japan enters the war on our side and has us enter the war in retaliation. You have to, in order to understand why Japan bombs Pearl Harbor, we have to go back and look at what Japan is doing in the Pacific and in Asia and China specifically to understand what brings them over to Hawaii. So our next video is going to be Japan and the road to Pearl Harbor.